Bloodborne is a pretty disturbing game. It's got everything it says on the box: grisly deaths, surprisingly fun torture devices, zombies and werewolves and monsters of every variety, a truly astounding abundance of blood. But those also aren't why it's so unsettling. Bloodborne is a world built on lies. A world where churches run secret biological experiments on their parishioners in order to attain godhood. A world where the populace is tricked into murdering their friends, family, neighbors for fear that they might otherwise become monsters. A world where you, the player, don't even really get to be a hero because you're secretly the puppet of forces you may not ever truly understand. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. This game has an encyclopedic body of lore that plays with this concept on so many levels, but it's really not just a Bloodborne thing, is it? I mean, sure, the gothic, mind-melting murder world of the game certainly adds a lot to it, but in a more general sense, I think the thing I felt most of all playing this game is just the horror of deception. Which, when I say it out loud, feels pretty unremarkable. Of course, being deceived feels bad. That's no surprise. You expect political adversaries, villains, abusers to try their best to trick you. That knowledge doesn't take away the sting when they do manage to pull one over on you, but at least it's there. At least you know where you stand. No, what I find really horrifying isn't the deception itself, but what happens to you when the one lying to you is the one you trust most of all. The church is lying, Hunter. For whom have you spilt this blood? Having trouble building worlds for your stories? I used to have the same problem, but there's an amazing 12-part class that helped me a lot. Creating unique and powerful worlds, taught by many-time author and professor Lincoln Michelle. Check the description to see how you can watch it for free and break through all the obstacles holding you back. A big thanks to Skillshare for sponsoring this video and giving us the opportunity to tell you about it. It's really nice to be able to share something with you that I genuinely care about instead of some mobile game I've never played before. I hope you'll give it a look. For this kind of story to work, there has to be someone in a relative position of power. They know something you don't, and you trust them to be honest with you. Unsurprisingly, a lot of dynamics fit that bill. I think the most well-known version of this story is the one that starts all the way at the top, when the authorities cover things up. Governments and rulers are notorious for hiding the truth from their populace in order to control or protect them. They have and do use their power to engineer conspiracies and cover-ups too wide-ranging in their scope not to believe. On the more speculative side, we have stories like Alex Kister's Mandela Catalog, in which the police let citizens die in order to hide the horrible truth about the identity-stealing demons breaking into people's homes. There's also the community-based SCP Foundation, which uses memory-wiping agents, propaganda, and every other tool at its disposal to prevent the world from learning about strange scientific anomalies that would surely drive them mad, or worse. But it's not always that spectacular. This is also George Orwell's 1984 and Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451, both of which feature a far more grounded version of this despite being science fiction. The government is hiding the truth of a great war in order to keep people complacent. And that, I am sorry to say, really isn't that far-fetched. As much as I shy away from conspiracy theories, government projects like MKUltra back in the 50s, and stuff you see every day in the state media of more authoritarian countries, that stuff makes it hard not to feel a bit jaded. I guess you're just supposed to trust these people because they're in office? A little precarious, that. It's no surprise people tell a lot of stories about this. The tension and terror are real. They're there, and fiction provides a good way to approach them psychologically without the necessity of a tinfoil hat. This also happens at lower levels too. Your community can lie to you just as easily. Governments are, relatively speaking, very materially powerful. They have far more tools than just nationalism to throw at their cons. And while the same can be true for smaller organizations that do not have federal or state funding, clubs, churches, families, the difference is that loyalty and identity are key to their functioning. This isn't paying taxes and reaping social benefits. This is alignment. In a sense, you are who you surround yourself with. You put trust in them to help shape you into who you want to be. It's a vulnerable position. Unfortunately, that also makes it ripe for exploitation. You've probably heard enough about fraudulent televangelists and predatory priests by now to recognize the shape of this. And if you look, you can find it in fiction too. It's there in the conspiratorial witch hunts put on by the church in the Castlevania Netflix series, or in the conspiracy of the Healing Church in Bloodborne. They connect to the same underlying principle. Allegiance to a group also makes you vulnerable to them. They hold a part of your identity. But what happens when they turn out not to be so trustworthy, to have dark, ulterior motives? Where does that leave you? Speaking of which, deceptions like this aren't only something that happens between people and their institutions. It also happens on a more personal level as well. This is probably the least complex version of the story, but also one of the most painful. When you place your faith in someone against everyone and everything else in the world, certain beyond any shadow of a doubt that you can at least trust them, only to discover that your whole relationship was built on a lie, there are few things more devastating. And, unfortunately, I think this also happens to people a lot in real life. Lovers are disloyal. Business partners skim a bit off the top. It's a part of life, and you grow a little number, a little more wary every time. But there's a difference between those things and, say, finding that your mother is actually some strange woman who's been holding you hostage your whole life, like Chloe does in the movie Run, or that your partner and only confidant has led you to believe that your wife has been dead for years so she can keep you as her own forever, as happens to Sweeney Todd in the 2007 film. It's always agonizing, but in the cases of abuse, where your trust is brandished against you as a means of control, it becomes truly horrific. But I think there's something scarier than being deceived by your government, your community, your friends. I think there's one person who can do more harm to you with their lies than anyone else. You. Self-delusion is a very real, very difficult thing, and it makes for a very interesting story. These are some of the most troubled characters with some of the most complex internal conflicts out there. Junji Ito's adaptation of the book No Longer Human is a journey through the life of a man who's hiding from himself, horrified of what will happen if he ever confronts his true nature. In Stephen King's Pet Sematary, the protagonist is so hell-bent on bringing his son back to life at the cursed burial ground, he ignores what the place did to his pet cat, the monster he created. Authority, community, companions, self. These are the levels at which this happens, the ones who really stand to manipulate your trust in this way. It's scary to think that they could be capable of this at all, but even scarier to imagine what this kind of betrayal could do to a person. It's the end of the life you knew. A shift. It changes everything. Your entire world is displaced by it. At the highest levels, your sense of safety would be in ruins. When you find out that the arbiters of justice, the upholders of the social order, are actually lying, hiding something as terrible as a failing war, as horrifying as doppelganger demons, as reality warping, as sweeping scientific anomalies, well, now you have to wonder what else is a lie. Just how much of this world is a ruse, carefully manicured by those in power? How far into the matrix have they sunk you? Characters in these situations are likely to be the heroes who ignite revolutions, but they're just as likely to be the ones hiding in their houses, terrified what the next emergency news bulletin will bring. At the community level, it gets even worse. Because hey, at least if the government turns out to be evil, it's the man keeping you down. Unless you're a nationalist, you are not your nation's ruling body, and you can separate yourself from their actions. But it's not like that when it's your church or your family. You identify with them. You identify by them. When everyone you know starts chanting for blood, piling wood on the stake, do you go with them? Do you let that become who you are too? Or do you reject it and run? Tear yourself from the social fabric and face the loneliness? For most characters in this situation, those are the only choices. And even then, it doesn't stop, because these are the people you choose, the people you care about. And look who they turned out to be. In some way, you have to wonder, is that who you were, too? When we get down to the personal level, this kind of thing really starts to warp your perception of reality. So much of the human experience is people creating people. You sort of live half in yourself and half in the people closest to you. To find that that part of you hasn't been given but grifted away from you by someone who never cared about you quite the way you thought? How do you come back from that? How is the girl raised by the abusive, manipulative mother supposed to trust any caregiver ever again? How does the man misled by the jealous sycophant ever let anyone else that close? I can't imagine how you wouldn't fold into yourself after this, see closeness itself as a threat. Your world would become very small, very fast. But that isn't even the deepest a deception can cut. Because remember, you can do this to yourself. And what happens when you do? What happens when you deny your senses, your experience, your understanding? What happens when you cling to a lie in order to alter your own perspective, your own feelings? You become the man who fooled himself into thinking he could escape himself, but only ended up losing himself in the end, no longer human. You become the creator of your own curse. You enter the land of untreated personality disorders, chronic psychosis, willful delusions, a place where you can't even trust yourself anymore. You become a prisoner in your own skin. In a lot of these stories about dark, hidden secrets, conspiracies, and masquerades, the object of the deception ends up in the spotlight. Once the eldritch horror or the secret history of abuse is revealed, that's the spectacle. That's what we see. The deception itself shrinks away. Bloodborne isn't like that. As I said at the start, it's a game overflowing with grisly spectacles of every kind. So many that they almost desensitize you. But you know what never goes away, no matter how many werewolves or holy spiders or angry cosmic babies you fight? That shift. The way that the deception has displaced this entire world. How almost every character in the game has been deceived on some level, and what it's made of them. The lies of the healing church have turned the populace into paranoid subhuman mobs. The ambition of the school of menses have trapped them all in an endless nightmare. The few characters you do actually kind of trust are eager to send you off toward eternal suffering. And you yourself, the player? You go. Despite all the horrific fates of all the others who've walked this path before you, despite the clear impending knowledge that the world you're saving is not at all the world you thought it was, you go. Not that you have a choice. It's a path the game sets you on, but it's easy to feel that sense of false hope, that you're the one who will end the nightmare, even though that was never really an option for you. The deception is everywhere, and despite all its many horrors, the game wouldn't be half as disturbing without it. The truth can certainly be horrible. There are perhaps things you would rather not know. But what monster can destroy your faith in leadership all on its own? What monster can drive you to tear yourself from your community, destroy any comfort you find in closeness, make you an enemy to yourself, your own psychological jailer? The only one I can think of is a lie, told by someone you trust. A quiet monster, easy to overlook. But now that you know about this monster, what it looks like, how it strikes, what do you do with it? Well, if you're like me, it's probably making you itch to do some world building, see what kinds of conspiracies and cover-ups you can cook up. Unfortunately, for anyone who hasn't done it before, building a whole world is quite a task. It can be daunting trying to figure out where to start. If you find yourself in that camp, maybe this video won't help you that much, but I do know something that will. I recently found a 12-part video series called Creating Unique and Powerful Worlds, taught by many-time author and professor of fiction, Lincoln Michel. He walks you through how to begin your new world, what the ripple effects of that starting idea will be like across your world, how to create themes within your world, how to create characters to experience the world you've made, and finally, how to put all of these things together. The process of making an entire world can be really paralyzing, but it doesn't have to be. This course will absolutely help you bring the size of the task down to something you can really understand and manage. I can say from experience that it is so liberating just to have a roadmap for a project like this, and thanks to our sponsor Skillshare, you can actually watch it for free. I personally would sign up for this course alone, but you'll also get access to thousands of other classes as well. Experts from pretty much every discipline have gathered there to share their knowledge and experience. There are classes on creative writing, illustration, fine art, animation, graphic design, film and video, pretty much anything you can imagine. You can even join in on live classes, connecting with other creators and teachers while you learn. After talking with them about it, it seems like the people over at Skillshare can see why we're so excited about this writing class. So they've decided to give you the opportunity to experience it and any other Skillshare class that catches your interest for free. This month, the first 1,000 Tale Foundry fans who join the Skillshare community will get access to not just the usual 15-day trial for free, but a full 30-day trial. An entire month of free learning and expert guidance on all the creative things you've ever wanted to do. Click the link in the description or the link right at the end of this video to get started. And I would definitely hurry because those slots are going to fill up fast. Once you've finished creating unique and powerful worlds, please come back and tell us the impact it's had on you as a writer. I cannot wait to hear the success stories. I guess this is us saying, lying is cool. We'd definitely like to see a lot more of it. Pollute the water, corrupt the church, break trust in your fiction. Because there are truly few things more horrifying. I can't wait to see all the ideas you come up with in the comments. Until then, thanks for watching and keep making stuff up. Bye!